Welcome back, everyone. I am Pastor Ben here with Jordan. And before we begin the show segment, whatever you want to call it for today, I did want to let you guys know of a pretty big announcement. We are no longer called the EMD Campus Ministry Podcast. That's what we have been running under the name of. That was clunky. But so our new name is actually going to be the PB&J podcast. Stands for Pastor Ben and Jordan. It's also just something pretty fun, pretty casual, something palatable for a lot of people and pretty basic.
Yeah, palatable,
So that
figuratively and metaphorically, by the way.
Yeah, and I don't mean basic as in like boring, just like, down to earth, hearty stuff. So that's what we're going to be. We don't have like logo, social media stuff set up yet. We will get on that as soon as we can. But just wanted you guys to be aware that from here on out, we are the PB&J podcast. So this is going to be our first episode as the PB&J podcast. And one of the things that we're doing differently is we're not doing so much series anymore. So our previous series was on studying scripture. Before that, it was on the Apostles' Creed. Those are more long form, very structured, very researched segments, a lot more educational, more like a lecture. We want to go in a different direction. We want to be more conversational. So that being said, one of the things that we talked about recently was trying to, I guess if I could put it this way, address the elephants in the room.
Yeah.
The more maybe uncomfortable, more controversial topics. We sort of strayed away from that as we were getting a feel for how we wanted things to go. But we really felt like these are conversations that people need to be having,
Yeah.
and maybe have some other perspectives brought in to help us, better think through and process what's going on in our world. We had sort of a test run a while ago with how should Christians respond to the 2020 election. That was an interesting one. So that being said, today's topic is you could say it's political as well. You could definitely say that, but it's also something that a lot of Christians, a lot of churches are facing. And so the subject for today's conversation is how should churches or how should Christians respond to COVID lockdowns? I mean, however we want to interpret that, whether that's your state, maybe you're locked down. I'm from Michigan. Governor Whitmer has had us in lockdown for some time. We're just sort of used to it by now. Jordan, you're in another state. I don't know exactly what it's like there, but I know churches all over the place, they're trying to make decisions about how should they approach this. So with that being said, that's what we want to talk about today.
Yeah. So I'm in Colorado, and we have Polis as our leader. For the most part, I think actually even some of the hard conservatives have been fairly comfortable with what he's done. He's tried to be pretty graceful to the small businesses. So we have a lot of outdoor dining in Colorado, so we've been able to survive that. But you can't eat anywhere that has indoor dining right now. It's all takeout or sitting outside.
Hmm.
So it's been a little different than the Michigan experience. No crazy death threats against my governor that have gone national at this point.
Oh, well,
Uh,
that's good.
yeah,
Yeah, we just had a kidnapping plot. So
yeah, that was rough. That was different.
yeah,
So luckily in that sense we're in a better spot, I guess, because at least we're all like not willing to hurt people. But really, Ben, when we talked about this, like this does stem from our political conversation. Not that we want to talk all about politics, but what we ended up finding was the response that you guys had to that chat was more significant than we've done before, and I think it was good. I think it showed us that there's a need for a place to be graceful. Can I kind of go a little bit off topic for a second, Ben? I want to hear your thoughts on this. My
sure.
pastor on Sunday talked about a study done at University of Pennsylvania, so Penn, pretty prestigious school. The study analyzed people who were religious and how they approached problems and how they
Hmm.
approached politics and how they just lived life in general. One of the things that it said is that they approach problems and particularly politics from a more objective place because their hope wasn't in a figure. So they had, and this is kind of a weird thing, like the idea is that there was less of a personal stake in it because your stake and your submission is to the kingdom of God. And what I mean by that is that they were able to have a healthier, more like clear-headed discourse because they had a different value system. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like everything didn't rise or fall on Trump or Biden for us now, right? Or when the study was done, I think it was a Bush in office. I don't remember which Bush though. So it'd either be Bush versus Kerry Gore or Bush versus who did Bush and Right? I don't even know who Bush beat in the '90s, the first Bush. I have no idea. Anyway, that's bad history on my part. But the point is simply this: that like we approach things differently, and I think we kind of discovered there's a need for that. And
Mhm.
I don't know, Ben, if you got thoughts on that, but I think that's kind of why we wanted to shift to more of a conversational model. Um, Ben and I used to sit in our dining hall at college and have conversations like this all the time. So it's kind of fun because we're doing something a little
Yeah.
different rather than teaching, which we also taught together and I thought went really well. Um, we're just going to hang out again, and we're hoping that's a little bit more valuable to you guys. So our big question today is about the pandemic, right? I'm sure
Mhm.
in some sense we're all tired of talking about it, but maybe we can talk about it in a fresh way. Um, I would like to divorce it from the political frustrating part if we can, just for a
Mhm.
little bit to get to the root of the issue.
Yeah.
If you're okay with that.
No, I think we should absolutely keep it as political as
Okay.
possible.
All right. That's I'm assuming that's sarcasm. The look Ben gave me on if you're watching on YouTube, you saw those of you on the pod, you're like, what is going on? Ben's being Ben's being funny.
Yeah, I'm always sarcasm is my second language.
It's my love language.
Yeah.
Um, my wife told me that once. She goes, sarcasm is my love language. I was like, that's a love language? Um,
I need to start using that. It's totally true though. It's
yeah.
a thing.
Um, I guess. But here's the deal, right? I want to just kind of put that aside, bracket it if you can in your mind for a minute so we can get to the root of the issue, man. So, Ben, here's where I'm at, man. I think this year is the year for Christians to be challenged to be as graceful as they've ever been. American Christian, well, even really global Christians, but particularly American Christians.
Mhm.
We had a melting pot year. And by melting pot, I mean actually just basically a year in a kettle that's about to explode. We had an election cycle with a pandemic, and everybody is reeling because we don't know what's going to happen next. Right? Election years are always weird years anyway, but add on
Mhm.
top of that the layer of like we have a disease or a virus, excuse me, that we don't really understand super well, or at the early part didn't understand at all, or have a lot of ideas. And I think that everybody, whether you're a business owner, a pastor, a governor, a senator, even the president, right? And I'm saying this as a person that's been somewhat critical. I'll just openly say that. Like these people are making decisions in a new world that none of us have really faced. And yeah, we can talk about the playbook that Biden and Obama put together that Trump threw out. Yeah, maybe that's a thing, but it wasn't quite the same, right?
Mhm.
And it's not like if you're a pastor, like I went to school with a bunch of people that were prepping to be ministers. Ben, did you take a class or even have a section in the class that taught you on how to handle a health crisis?
No, not at all.
And that's the thing, right? Like this isn't normal. This is not normal. So we don't prep for this. So it's like a paradigm shift, you know? And
Mhm.
all I'm trying to get at is that it's a year to extend grace because no matter where you are on one side or the other, the reality is every single person is trying to figure it out. And for me, I don't think we should what we have to figure out what we need to get to is a common ground to have the conversation. I'm
Mhm.
not talking about the scale, right? We talk a lot about scales like total lockdown or this is all a hoax, it's fake news, that's not what I'm talking about. What do we all agree on as people, particularly American Christians, and that we can get even non-Christians to agree on us with so we can have a real meaningful dialogue. That's for me is the important thing.
Mhm.
Whew, deep breath. Ben, I know
Yeah.
you have thoughts.
Uh, no, and I don't want to get ahead of maybe where you're going. Um,
You can.
but yeah, I guess the good thing that I'm seeing from this, or I guess one of the positive things, maybe to make me a little optimistic in my outlook, is as far as like data and science and facts are involved. I mean, you do have some confusion because as we learn more things, the data changes, and sometimes the new information we have is actually not accurate. Sometimes older information is more accurate. Sometimes newer information is more accurate. And like what you said, this is all new for us, so everyone's trying to figure out what to do. Um, the problem is, in my opinion, the differences and the disagreements we have in terms of how to respond to the information that we have. I think that's where a lot of the issues come from. Um, but that's just me. So I guess you're looking at it on the meta scale. I don't see anyone arguing myself. I haven't heard anyone argue COVID's not real. It doesn't exist. It doesn't
No,
affect people. I mean, early on, you did have people say, "Oh, it's just a mild form of the flu." I don't hear anyone saying that anymore. I think pretty much everyone acknowledges, yeah, like people do die of this. There are people who are vulnerable to this. Uh, Masks, whether you agree with them or not, they're a thing. The level of effectiveness, I think, could be argued because, again, we're still trying to figure all this out. People are just trying to do what's best. Some things
sure.
work better than others, whatever. My wife's a nurse. Your wife's a nurse. From the medical side, people still, some of the information is conflicting, some of it's not all there. So it's just really confusing. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of people are. Let me back up a little bit. I feel like a lot of the tension revolves around people who assume all the data's in and the right answers are right in front of us. We just need to do it, and then they're just having disagreements because what their perspective is totally different than someone else. I don't know if I'm going off base there or what. I
No,
kind of
no,
lost my train of thought, but
no, you didn't. I get what you're saying. So like, I'm kind of with you, but I'm kind of not. So this is where I'm at.
okay.
Because I buy the idea that the data is changing and that we need to give room for grace. I buy that idea. I buy the idea that the conflict arises because both sides,
Mm,
truthfully. So this is the stab at the left and the right, like are so convinced that this is definitively true. Whether it's like, I do have people on my timeline on Facebook and social media, like talking about the pandemic, the hoax, and this was
mm,
a ploy by the Democrats and all that stuff, or China is attacking us through a virus. It's warfare. Like I've seen honestly way more of that than I wanted to see of that stuff because that got weird. But conspiracy theorists, like even if we don't take them seriously, they're out there, and these are
mhm,
people that genuinely believe this. So, and they've been in my, I'll just say it, my family. Try not to say that because I'm on a podcast and if they listen to it, I'll get in trouble. But we got a delay on the taping, I hope. But I'm just trying to say, like, that's been something that I deal with, and that's kind of influencing my perspective. So for me, I think like I'm with you on the sense that like we're way too convinced that what we have is capital T true, like right then and there, right? Like it's the most important thing, and this is what we should believe, and everybody should believe it. Like I agree with that. Where I differ, where I think I differ, because we didn't really get into it too much, was like weighing that, right? Like, um, I guess for me, it's about how we should handle. No, I don't think we disagree. Maybe I'm wrong. I was gonna say this, Ben, and I don't know what your thoughts are, man. I'm just struggling here because I'm just struggling. Uh, what I
well,
was
I
trying
guess that's where we all are. So
to this is
so it's
2020 in a
okay.
nutshell. Uh, the struggle is real. That should be like the year motto, by the way. The struggle is real. Like,
It
struggle is
really should
real
be.
and seemingly never ending. All I'm trying to
Yeah.
get at, man. All I'm trying to get at is that, like, for me, I always felt not even that. Like the only thing I'm hesitant on is I really want to believe the science and I want to try to use the data, even if it's flawed data, to try to make the right choice in the right moment because that's all I have to work with, and I'd rather work
Mhm,
with that than go reckless. What I would consider reckless. You know what I
mhm,
mean? And I feel like it's become to the point where because people are aware that the science isn't perfect, that they're willing to just like, okay, we shouldn't take it seriously at all. And that to me is like, hey, like I would rather err on the other side of that coin because I think if you're right, Ben, and people are acknowledging that people do die from this, it's a big deal. I had a family friend die this week, so I'm a little shook up. I'm not
oh,
gonna lie to you.
man, I'm sorry to hear that, man.
No, you're good. I didn't tell you in prep. I was trying not to talk about it, but I'll just let it out. That's probably why I'm like struggling here. I'm not gonna tell you I was particularly close to this person. I'm not, but they went to my church growing up. I was friends with their kid, and that kid and I hung out in youth group together, and it's just sad.
Mm,
You feel bad for the family, but my whole thing is like I because I've encountered a little bit different experience than you've been. Like I guess I'm just like a little skeptical and a little gun shy because I feel like I've seen a lot on the other end of an extreme spectrum, and I'm like just trying to like kind of come in there like, whoa, hey, we gotta take this seriously. I was a little scared because I feel like I've been pushed a little farther down the other direction than maybe I would have been, and I actually wish I'd had your experience where it's been more moderate and in my mind reasonable. You know, like,
Well,
um,
maybe I framed it wrong. I wouldn't say my experience has been more moderate. It's just,
well, you just
uh,
haven't been filled with like some crazy stuff, is what I'm saying. Well, maybe you have,
oh, I
but
guess. Maybe I'm just used to it living in Michigan. Maybe everything here is so crazy that it's just
slide,
become like,
slides
"Eh,
off
it
your
is what
back.
it is, you know?
Just slides
Yeah,
right off
someone
your
tried to
back.
kidnap the governor the other day. It's a Monday. What can I say?
It's hunting season's next week, right? That's cool, right? You know?
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I was gonna say it in a Uper accent, but I can't do a Uper accent. I can't do it.
Yeah, dude, I can't either, and I like grew up here.
Yeah,
I'm just a troll. Um, no, like there's a lot of emotions involved. Like even what you had mentioned, losing someone. Like it's weird
and the
trying to
fear of losing someone.
balance. Yeah, like so, like all right. So since you got personal, I'll get a little personal. I struggle with the emotional side of it too because I'm like in like I don't know how to balance it sometimes. So that's why
God,
I
yes.
try to weigh my opinions because I'm like, I don't even know exactly where I stand on this. Because I have a relative who, like, I can't even see because they're constantly going to doctor's appointments because their health is not that great. And every time they go, they have to be quarantined for 2 weeks. And like, I haven't seen them in so long. And they're like a very social person and they're just totally isolated.
Mm,
And it's frustrating for me because I'm like they need to have like some human interaction. Like I know that person. Like, is there any way that we could allow for that? No, like it's all totally locked down. But then I mean, I guess that same person, but I also know other people who, if they came into contact with COVID, like it would kill them. So it's hard to balance that. Because like you have people that you love that uh you don't want to take a risk and do something that could jeopardize their health, but at the same time you're also seeing like the negative effects of them uh experiencing sort of that bubble of protection that everyone wants to put around them, and you're seeing how that is also having a negative effect on them, and so you don't really know what to do. It's that's a struggle for me
yeah.
personally. So
No,
that's
I
why I
get
say
it.
like, yeah, I do have my opinions on it, but at the end of the day, I feel like anyone, it's a lot more nuanced than one side or the other because it's like I don't really know how to navigate a lot of that, and it's frustrating both ways.
No, you're
It's
right. And
really frustrating.
can I add to what you just said, man? Because I think you actually touched on something really important. And I know we're getting
Sure.
a little off topic of how the church responds, but I think we got to talk about it in human terms before we start talking about it in theological ones, because
Mhm.
I think we need to just acknowledge the reality of it. I don't know how you feel about that, but you talked about your friend, your family member, excuse me, your family member and their isolation and that frustrating. And it's like, I was just thinking, I was thinking about what you were saying, and like, I think we're all just tired of like the screen, and like
Mm.
we're all getting isolated and we're all getting edgy, and it's frustrating because like you just nailed it, dude. Like, you want to find that common middle ground, but you're so emotionally invested in it because it's real stuff. It's not seeing your family. Like, my wife and I are debating not going home for Christmas at the time of this recording. That sucks for me. I haven't seen my brother. I haven't seen my brother since February. My
Mm.
parents luckily flew out to help me move because I moved recently, and that was cool. But like, I haven't seen Morgan's parents since I saw Morgan. Morgan hasn't seen her parents, and I haven't seen her parents since June. We stopped by in June.
Wow.
Um, and that doesn't seem like a big deal, but
Mm.
you know, it feels like a long time because we used to see them all the time. In fact, they used to come over on the weekends pretty frequently. They're
Mm.
retired; they have that ability to travel, but her dad's very sick. He's got some health issues that he's been dealing with, and it's been hard because like it's emotionally invested. So you want to give grace and be that middle person, and you want to find that middle common ground. But like, I don't know, for me, like, Ben, I'll just get personal. Like, you're like, I have my opinions, like, because I see how it's affecting people. Like, I get so mad, and I'm just like, if everybody would have done this, that, or this, we would be, more out of this by now, and I wouldn't have to deal with this like nonsense. And I just get angry, and so it just pushes me back to that extreme, and it's just wrong. It's wrong, and I know it's wrong, but I can't help feeling it. And that's the frustrating part, man. Like, I just feel like we're constantly trying to figure out. I just feel like we need to figure out. And Ben, I want to know your. I just really want to hear you talk me off a ledge or tell me something other than my own words. Uh, we need to figure out that common set of facts. And I'm not talking like the science facts, but like a common set of values on this, you know? And I think that's what the church really could step in.
Yeah.
Like what is the value here? Does that make sense? Like what is it
Hmm.
that we agree on and we can all come together on? Because we need
Yeah.
that not only as a country, but as a society that's been distanced from each other and have been spending their entire time watching videos on TikTok, YouTube, FaceTime, all that stuff. Like we haven't been around each other to have
Hmm.
those healthy little micro conflicts that help us like kind of tame ourselves. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know.
Man, that's a tough one. Um, I mean, I
Kind of
guess
a tough
the
spot. Like,
yeah, no, I guess the simple Sunday school answer is like, sheesh, what is it? I don't even know. I don't think
right?
there is
Because
a
like
simple Sunday school answer. Just
dude,
like,
I
yeah,
went
you
to
want
the
to
New
be,
Testament trying to find something for this, and I was struggling. I'm like, what is the answer here?
yeah, like the tough thing is, obviously as Christians, you want to be Christ to people. The difficulty in this is that the biggest thing we talk about Christ is that Christ is incarnational.
Hmm.
Right? So we need to model that. Like we need to go where people are hurting. We need to be the presence of God there. Well, how do you do that when you can't be present with people?
Yeah,
Like that's a huge struggle. And I don't know, maybe for me that's where a lot of my personal struggle is in terms of like from a church perspective, how do you do this?
yeah,
Because you can't be incarnational in that way. Like yeah, you could find some things like I mean, thank God for technology, but you're right, like it's not the same though.
yeah.
Um
And you get screen fatigue. Like, I'll be honest, like,
yeah.
I lead small groups for middle school. That's my role in the church.
Mhm.
And I love the sixth grade boys. They're a lot of fun, man. They're really, really crazy. I got sixth and seventh graders, so it's a wild time. But even they were like, not even themselves, man. They were so quiet on the Zoom meetings. They were just like so bored. Like after the novelty of like turning yourself upside down on Zoom with a beach background wore off, like
Yeah.
shout out to my buddy Jack. He'll never listen to this podcast, but shout out to my buddy Jack in small group who killed it with the beach backgrounds this summer. And then kept trying to convince us that he was actually on a beach. It's like, Jack, we all have Zoom. We know how this works. But shout out to Jack for the backgrounds. But my whole thing was like, it's not the same. Like we got tired. Like I got tired of, I felt for the first time, I felt like I don't want to lead group, not because I don't want to work with the kids and not because I don't care, because I'm like, I'm just tired of getting on the computer because I work on a
Yeah.
computer now constantly.
Mhm.
Oh, it's the same
No,
computer
same,
too.
man. Yeah.
All right.
Or
Sorry.
like even just something casual, like, I want to have people over, I want to play games. Like I lead a young adult ministry. The only thing we have is a Wednesday night small group over Zoom. And like that's all I want to do because I can't do anything in person. And like what you said, if I do anything more, I'm like that's screen fatigue. And I have a lot of students who they do all their stuff online. I'm like, locked in. And like churches are facing the same thing. And it sucks.
Yeah.
Really sucks. But I mean, I will
It
say,
does. It does.
yeah.
And
I do want to give a shout out to my small group because we had a young lady in our small group propose the idea of writing cards and letters to people who were facing isolation. So that's something that we've been doing. And
oh,
I
that's
I mean, I
cool.
give props to them, and she's sort of taken the reins on that. So I'm really proud of them for keeping that up. So that I guess that's one other thing you could do that more elderly people appreciate that. Well, I think everyone appreciates a handwritten card and letter every now and then. So I guess this is an idea. Uh, if you want to help brighten someone's day, write
I
them a
think it'd be
card.
good.
You know, so there you go. It's my advice for the day.
Yeah.
I know there's a little bit of a
Yeah. No,
tangent,
it's
but
good. Actually, I like that a lot. It, and that is one of the things that I think is really good. When we talk about the church response, because like really, like I think for us, the nuance in this whole thing. I talked about a lot about like what is real, what's not. I guess we could debate that till we're blue in the face, but that's not really productive to me. I don't know how you feel about that, but
mm,
at least it doesn't feel productive at this point because I think we're all tired of it. But like, we're talking about going in person versus going online. Now that we're getting past, in my state and in your state, we're far enough north where we get snow. Outdoor services aren't cool. Although I did have a really cool idea for an outdoor service in the winter, and people were like, "Oh, don't do it." And I'm like, I think a drive-through candlelight service doing in 15-minute rotations where you alternate like staff doing like a little sermonette and everybody stands outside with candles like we RSVP would actually
mm.
work really well. But whatever, don't take my idea. Anyway, but we
That's
were doing
legit,
outdoors.
man. That's a really good
I'll
idea.
explain why. I'll pitch it to you guys because I actually want to hear this. And if you steal it and give it to your church, then you can look like a hero. Um, Depending on the state you're in, if you're doing it or not. But here's the thing: like we were doing outdoor church, and we loved it, dude. We loved it. It was cool. And when people started coming to our church because their churches just felt like they didn't have the facilities to do that, they didn't have a big enough like yard or space because it's like more landlocked in our area or in the area we were in. And like people just started coming to our church and just enjoying like our body because they just wanted to be around people, and we distanced and everything was okay. And I felt super safe. My wife felt super safe, and it was beautiful. Now it's getting a little colder. It's like way harder to do, you know. But that was a really good break for us. I'm just hoping that we can get back to that and make it through winter. But my idea for the candlelight service was this. Actually, I want to pitch this, Ben, and if you should give this to your church, if you guys can do it. So our church has like a pretty sophisticated computer system where we can RSVP already for services. They've
Mhm.
shut down online. They shut down in-person services this week because of the state mandate. But before that, we had limits and pretty meaningful limits. I think they'll bring them back to like 20% in a couple weeks here. We'll see how cases go. But anyway, so what you would do is you'd RSVP. So what I want to do is I want to do like, because like our church normally does like 4 services on Christmas Day. Like, why don't we just do like 2 hour blocks instead of one big service? And the hour block is it's like 50 people, 40 people. You're outside, so no one's outside for more than 15, 20 minutes at a time, right? Where it's cold. You can set up like a fire pit and put fire pits outside where families are. So you have like 4 or 5 fire pits out there. So 4 or 5 families come. You have the band play a song. Then they go inside and get warm while the minister's inside. They come back out. They do like a 15 minute, like a 10 minute little sermonette, like on Christmas, like to do like some kind of encouraging word. Everybody gets to see each other, right? You can have hot cocoa out if you can serve it, depending on your state laws. But if not, you could do like prepackaged hot cocos, as long as you have gloves and do the preparation. Our state allows you to do that. So your state may or may not do that. But then like you could have everybody come. And so like, let's say you have like 3 blocks in the day. You do like a mid-morning service. So like, people that are off and retired or that are getting ready to travel. So they took the day off on like Christmas Eve or whatever. So like from 11 to noon, you know what I mean? Right before lunch. So you have like 15 minutes, like you get 4 groups in there at like, 40, like, 30 to 50 people a pop. That can max out at like, at 50 for 4 sessions, that's 100 people, that's 200 people,
Mm.
so our church is about 600. So then you have the second session, you'll do like mid-afternoon, so like let's say like 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. And again, like everybody gets a break. Your band can get a break. If you have a worship leader, they can just have one person doing it. They go out there, your 15-minute sessions, and you just kind of rotate through your little sermonettes. So it's only an hour worth of work there, still less than it normally is on Christmas. You're outside, you're heated, you're warm. And then we go to do the night services. And this is where I think you can get really cool. That's where you bust out the candle lights. You know what I mean? So then you give people candles because it's warm in their hands, but also it's really pretty and aesthetic. You keep the lights on low. You have the bonfires going or the fire pits going. That's a big thing here in Colorado. So do the fire pits, like those little ones you buy above ground. And like you guys have people stand around there and you do your sermons at night, and then you have the cocoa out or whatever. I just feel like that would be like, I feel like good. You could do like a late night session, like, for like, 5 to 6, and you could do like a late night one, kind of like a midnight mass kind of deal, like the
Hmm.
Catholics do. I don't know. It'd just be kind of a fun, cool new thing. I don't know how people, if it's snowing really bad, that's the only thing that ruins it. But like, I mean, unless it's snowing really bad, you're pretty much good to go. And even if it is snowing bad, like the whole idea of a covered fire pit being warm and the candle lights might actually make it more festive and fun. The only thing you got to worry about is like your speaker equipment. But, you know, depending on how you set it up, it may be feasible or not. If you have like an awning in your building or something, do it under like those churches that have like the drive-through things in the front that they pick
Oh, yeah.
people up, do it underneath
Yeah.
there so it covers from the snow, and that people just sit outside of that. I don't know. I
Hmm.
just think the idea would work, and it'd be fun, and it'd be a cool tradition. And even if this all ended, like, I'm a big fan of the outdoor service. I'm a big fan of the spirit of Christmas. And one thing that I really, really hate, and this is my opinion, I really hate Christmas services that are packed to the point where you can't even breathe on each other. Not even the COVID. Like, it's just the air is too hot to breathe because like everybody, like,
Yeah.
you have 500 people in a room set up for 250 because everybody and their brother brought 7 of their cousins to church, which is nice. It's nice. It's really great for churches, but at the same time, it's also miserable if you're not on stage. As a person who is not on stage, it is horrible. I hate
Yeah.
it.
Or
And
if
then
you're an introvert like me, in which case you just want to get out of there as fast as possible.
you're just like, what the heck is going on? And so, like, I don't know. I just feel like it'd be kind of a cool thing because like it gives some, the appearance of space. It feels really festive and scenic. It's not overcrowded, but you can still get the groups in. I think it has potential for growth because, like, let's say a person has a church that they're going to go inside, but they don't feel comfortable. Well, they can come to your candlelight service this year. Maybe that's a good like a good chance for you. So I don't know. That's my pitch. Like, I think God is in the middle of all this doing cool stuff, but my pitch is that we can figure out cool ways to do stuff like that, to allow for people to come to church even if you can't be in the building and still get the what you're talking about, that face-to-face community in a safe way, but also do it in a fun way. If that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
mean, that's really representative of, I think, maybe a bit of an answer to how does the church respond to a lot of this. And I think you gave a great example, which is, yeah, just you got to get creative a little bit with it. I mean, as frustrating as it is, like that's a good idea. And some of the things that have happened in some churches are becoming like more staples too. Like churches sort of being forced into the position of moving things online, which a lot of churches have been talking about for a long time.
yeah, it's
But
forcing
now
you
it's
to
like,
do
oh,
it.
like you really got to do it.
Yeah.
So they've had the update, which is not a bad thing. Maybe not the best thing cost wise, because sometimes it can get pricey in terms of how you want to do it, but it's not bad. And forces you to think creatively. I think that's a great idea. While you were saying it, I was writing down what you were saying. I'm definitely going to pitch that to my pastor and see what he thinks.
Yeah.
Um,
Our snow's a little
but
tamer than Michigan, so hopefully it's not terrible for you. But you know, I grew up in
yeah.
Indiana. Like it snows on Christmas sometimes, but it's not usually terrible. But like,
Hmm.
I mean, I could think of like every church I've ever been to in Indiana had that little awning. You could just put your speakers out there, run power cords through an extension into the lobby, and you could still do like that kind of service. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
All right. Anyway,
Yep.
that's my pitch. Hopefully it works, and I hope you
Yeah.
guys can steal it. I told my minister or my youth pastor at church, and he didn't like it. He's like, I think we're just going to do it. I'm a little convinced. Actually, I'm not going to say it, but I don't think he liked it because I just don't think the idea of the cold. He's from Florida. I just think the idea of the
Ah.
cold is just very very repulsive to him. Uh, but the cold out
Yeah.
here is pretty chill. It's like by chill I mean like not mean like Midwestern cold. Midwestern cold is like a bully, Ben.
It can be. Oh, definitely around Chicago. Michigan, it depends on where you are.
That's true.
Like,
I guess if you're closer to the
it's
lake,
yeah. In some places in Michigan, like you really don't get a lot of wind. So, and the thing about for those who might not experience it, the thing with cold is a lot of like the bone chill effect comes
humidity.
from wind. If it's cold outside, but like the air is still, it really does not feel cold because you're not having like your heat being blown away.
Yeah.
So, like in Michigan, it could be like 0 degrees, but you could still stand outside for a decent amount of time with not a ton of heavy stuff on and still be fine. But like if you're in Chicago or something, like we went to school near
Oh,
Chicago, it was
miserable.
brutal. You'd be outside and you would instantly, doesn't matter how much you're wearing, you would instantly just freeze because that wind just, it
You
makes
hate
everything
it.
just so bitter.
You hate it. So anyway,
It's awful.
typical Midwesterners talking about the weather in a podcast about church. It's
Go
very,
figure.
or we just need this way to put ranch on pizza in this, and we're good. Like like we're all set.
Yeah. But one thing about that pitch that you mentioned, like that your youth pastor didn't really like the idea, I wonder too. Total speculation, but I could extrapolate this to other pastors that I know. Is this is some stress that is felt by churches,
Yeah.
which is though we do have a lot of really good ideas. Like a lot of these new ideas are also really stressful because it takes a lot of planning and a lot of doing things new, and some churches are experiencing some fatigue from that where it's like, I mean, we're constantly doing new things. Like, it's just exhausting. Like, we were just talking about this before the pod started. Like, we're exhausted, like, just personally having to constantly adapt to things. And a lot of it's emotional too, just dealing with, everything that's going on. But churches do feel that. Like, I feel like almost every month in my church's staff meeting, someone else has a new idea and like it takes a lot of planning, it takes a lot of coordination that a lot of people don't realize. I'm not knocking like your idea at
No, no,
all.
I know what you mean though.
I'm just approaching from a different perspective and saying, yeah, like there is
It's
some
hard
pushback to some
work.
of these ideas though, and it's not because people are lazy or because they just don't care or they might not like the idea. Some of it's just like, it's gonna take a lot of work.
And it's like,
And then
can we
like on
even
top
do
of
it?
everything else we gotta do, like we gotta stay on top of making sure the church is clean, making sure, we have enough hand sanitizer everywhere, that we're following all the mandates and all of that, like on top of whatever weekly church looks like
Yeah.
all the duties throughout the week. And I think maybe that also plays into how some people do take uh, pretty strong views when it comes to lockdowns. It's like, oh man, we got to go through this again. Like, there's more things we got to do now, even more stuff we got to pay attention to. Like, I can definitely see how it's exhausting for people.
Yeah. And I actually I didn't think about that, like how much work it takes to get a project off the ground like that. And like even as I'm thinking about my idea when you said that, Ben, like you still have to you're gonna have people out in the cold for essentially an hour of rotation so you can get them warm, right? But like I mean, warm for 10 minutes, you know, at a time, and then you have to go back out in the cold and go back, you know what I mean? Like that'd be kind of tough. Plus, like, you know, even though you get an hour break, you still gotta like you're not really getting a break, you're just getting a rest, you know, before you go and do another hour in the cold again. So I don't know, maybe that's why they didn't like the idea.
Maybe, but I guess I'm not saying that because I think it's a bad idea. I think it's a great idea, and but I'm more saying that to say I do know a lot of people are giving like church leaders a hard time for doing things or not doing things. So my response to that was really just to say, like, maybe one of the ways we can show grace, going back to how you really started the conversation, how do we live out, more, more graciously, is to recognize like church leaders have a lot on their plate.
They
Um,
do.
and just because they might not be doing things the way you like, it doesn't mean they don't care. It might just be that they're just exhausted having to wrestle with all this stuff.
Yeah. Can
um,
I
so
comment on that, Ben? Is that okay if I
yeah,
jump in
yeah,
on this?
absolutely.
All right. So like my wife and I have sent 2 emails to our church staff or those people.
Mm,
So this is gonna be interesting, but hear me out. Hear me out. Um,
okay.
the first time was in March when all this started. Our
Mhm.
church really early on was like, "Hey, we're actually gonna go forward. We're gonna do it. We're 100% gonna do it. We're gonna go forward." And that
You
was
mean
when
go forward, like how
in
do you mean
person,
by that?
in
Okay,
person.
gotcha.
Nothing was going to change right at the very beginning of all this when like all this stuff was coming out in March. And my wife in healthcare and another person in the church that is a biologist, virobiologist, mind you, they actually work on vaccines and like disease, like viruses, basically. Uh,
Oh, cool.
that they both sent an email and I co-authored it with my wife and we were just like, and that's not because I know anything, it's because I just want to put my name on it, and I basically did
Mm,
the grammar editing. That's all I'm good for is punctuation. Anyway, so I did that, and Morgan came up with all the smart stuff. Anyway, we put that together. We sent it off, and they thanked us, and it was really great. And they were like, "Man, I really appreciate it." And we're actually gonna go online, and that caused them to go online. It's been really good. And then we ended up going back in person. Part of that screen fatigue. I felt like our church felt like it wasn't as much church in online than it was in person. Like it's not real. I disagree with that, but I understand it because I understand the mental aspect of the fatigue. Our church is in a position where financially it's not a major problem for them. I don't think. In fact, I think they've actually done pretty good for the most part in handling all this. So we sent a second email about a month ago. The issue that we were running with is that my wife and I volunteered for student ministry,
mm,
and I felt really bad about this. It's tough. I don't want to flame any parents, man. I don't want That's not what I'm trying to do. But like parents would drop their middle schoolers off and go home to limit contact, and we as volunteers had to go there and we're exposed to like 20 kids. We had 3 COVID scares. I had to quarantine
mm,
3 times in October and November at no fault of my own because I wanted to serve students and they got it from kids at school. And these parents are able to go home and then drop their kids off. And yeah, they got a quarantine too, but like, you know, if their kid just happened not to go to church that Sunday or they didn't, you know, whatever, like they didn't have to do that. And that like caused some like pretty meaningful distress for work for my wife and I.
mm,
Uh, at one point we had to quarantine from each other because one of us got it and the other one didn't. So it was really, really frustrating. So we sent a second email and we actually got I'm not going to lie, I don't think that it was very well received. And I understand like what you mean because like we were critiquing our leaders, but we were like, hey, this is kind of unfair to your volunteers. Like they're either we need to go online or we need to figure out a way to like limit this. But you know, we and other volunteers have been through the ringer on this, trying to help and do like to help support your vision, and it's not working for everybody. And
mm,
I think they took it as we were challenging their ideas, and that's not really what we meant to do. And that's probably just our communication failure. But you know, I just say all that to like they're going through a lot, and they don't always have the right answer both ways, right? Sometimes they're
mm,
really right about stuff, you know, and sometimes they're really wrong about stuff. And I'm not saying don't communicate, but what I think would have helped is if there was a more of a consistent open dialogue with church leaders and the volunteers and the people in the building. I think pastors get I don't know, Ben. I think pastors get inundated with like way too many people trying to have like cooks in the kitchen. But I
Mhm.
think also the flip side of that is that there's also a very good potential for high collaboration to come up with new ideas. So what I'm saying is that if you have a good idea, I think it probably is appropriate for you to send it to staff,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and see if you can help
Mhm.
them. I just don't know what you think, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. Like, what is appropriate for like offering a critique? Because we just basically said, can we go back online? That second
Mhm.
email, we really disagree with this. We think it's dangerous. Like we're at risk, and we keep getting put at risk. And I have to choose between serving small group and my own health, and that's not like
Mhm.
I told them, like I just said, like I don't feel like that's a good thing, and I think that you can change that. And I want to help these students, but I can't help these students, and I have to step down if I don't otherwise. Like you're not giving me a choice, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know what your thoughts. Like, was that wrong? Like from a leader's perspective, I want to hear it from your side. I know how it's from my side, but how's it from your side?
Yeah. I think
Because
it's fine. Like if you, I mean, obviously you have to weigh your critique. Um, like just because you disagree with something doesn't mean you need to send off a angry text or something to your pastor. Not that that's what you did. I'm just
it
speaking more
was in some
generally.
ways. It was
Um,
fueled by frustration. Like I'm not going to lie to
yeah,
you. I thought it was
and that's
nice.
legitimate. I mean, you also serve as a leader, so that changes the dynamic too. Um, it if it was just like a regular layperson in the church who had a disagreement, like when I was a pastor, if someone disagreed with me and like sent an email or a text, I'll be honest, I didn't take it too seriously because a lot of the times it just felt like, okay, they're just upset about something, and it seems like one of those instances where like it was sent just out of frustration, so maybe they just need time to just sort of chill. But I always took it seriously, so I would talk with other people on my board. I might reference like whenever someone disagreed, I always talk to someone else about it as a church leader. That's what I did as a pastor. Um, and sometimes they would say something and be like, you know what, like I wouldn't take that complaint too seriously, and then that's how I would respond. Um, but it always did get my attention if someone brought it up in person or called me about it and they didn't yell. Like as long as they weren't like if as long as they were in control of their emotions, it totally changes the dynamic of the conversation. It makes people much more willing to listen. But so anyways, all that to say, no, I don't think what you did was wrong. Every pastor layperson relationship is going to be different, like even on an individual level. Some people, the pastors, just they know like, oh, they always complain about everything. So, like you really can't take them too serious.
Yeah,
But on a leadership level, it's different. But one thing I will say that makes leading in a church very difficult for a pastor is there are a lot of people giving input, like at a high level. Like you have other staff pastors who are giving their opinion, and the pastor, the lead pastor, executive pastor, whoever is like ultimately at the top of that chain, they trust their opinion. They listen to them. They listen to board members, and sometimes there could be like unanimous consent on something, and it's just totally wrong, but the pastor trusts those opinions. And then you have like one layperson or a few lay people who come up and be like, yeah, pastor, that decision is totally off base, you shouldn't do that. From a pastoral perspective, that's a very confusing situation, and sometimes you just got to trust your leaders uh,
yeah,
over like even if they're wrong. So and that for me, that's where a lot of anxiety came from when it came to having to make decisions in a church,
interesting,
because it was very difficult to have that perspective, because I grew up as a layperson in the church. My parents weren't pastors, so I really had that perspective of when the pastor makes these decisions, I knew how it was received. I knew how it had an impact on the whole church. When you're a pastor, you totally lose that perspective. Like it is
interesting.
really weird, and you have a totally different view, and that stressed me out because I was like, I want to know how my decisions are affecting people. So I would ask my leaders and they would tell me, and I just had to take them at their word because I didn't have a personal view of that. And sometimes it was wrong, and sometimes there would be issues that I did not know about,
Hmm.
um, because I just wasn't aware. Um, so yeah, I think it's fine to make pastors aware of that. To be honest with your pastors, be in control of your emotions. Though I would say that because pastors get a lot of criticisms, and it sort of becomes just sort of a habit. of if something comes across really strong in a negative way, you just have to blow it off because it just becomes habit. Not that it's illegitimate, it just becomes habit. But also, pastors are dealing with a lot of input and information can get lost. They can be fed bad information, and it's not their fault. It's just the blessing and the curse of being in a position of leadership. So, yeah.
Well, as you were talking, one thing that came to mind, and maybe this wasn't your intention, but was I kept thinking like, man, if I'm a layperson, like buy-in. I kept saying the phrase buy-in kept coming to mind for me. And what I mean by
Mhm.
buy-in is like, I was thinking about why we sent the email, and like maybe the email wasn't worded perfectly, and I don't think it was well received because I just think that it was a little critical at times, and we were critical and we were very frustrated. Like I said, we were the really cruddy October and cruddy November, early November. The rest of November got pretty good, but didn't start out very good. But what I'm saying is like, it came from my engagement with the church. Like I was able to engage with the church, and I'm still able to have a good relationship with those people despite that disagreement because of that buy-in. And we we're talking about how like the church can respond to this, like capital C, right? And I don't want to be a dead horse. And we talked about getting creative, but like one thing I was thinking was like with buy-in comes like initiative, like initiating things. Like, all right, so maybe I can't get the church to meet and do a Sunday service, but what if I could get their blessing to like, you know, bake a bunch of cookies and we could wrap them and put stuff like printed at the church, like maybe pastor could write a 2 sentence blurb and he brings me paper. I cut the paper and put it on a bunch of cookies I wrapped up in, handmade little foldable thing. You know what I'm talking about? Like when you get the wrapping things like around Christmas and you unwrap it and like cookies are in there. You guys never got those? So,
Yeah.
okay, all right, cool.
They're
I
like
thought I
these
was crazy for a second.
weird.
You're just looking at
Yeah, I
me.
don't know how to describe it,
Yeah, it's
but
like
yeah, I know
wrapping
what you
paper, but it's like cookie wrapping paper, or like just
yeah.
like for food in general. You
Mhm.
get like Buckeyes come in them too, or whatever.
Like the wax paper
Yes,
thing? Yeah.
yes, that stuff. And then you like wrap it up and you put a little bow on it. It's like, oh, here's Merry Christmas, But like
Yeah.
do stuff like that and see if like you could make it from the church and you just give the like your gift there is your labor. And we're talking about being creative like on the church side, but like what if the lay people could get creative too as Christians?
Mm.
Like what if that's part of it? Because I keep thinking about like what a strong church is. And I don't know, man. I wrestle with this every day, and I'm thinking about like these mega churches that are screwed right now because it's too many people.
Yeah.
It's not feasible right now. And it's a really good opportunity for smaller and mid-sized churches right now to grow and to gain some
Yeah.
meaningful traction.
Mm.
But what I mean by that is that like you guys have we have as churches of that size like a high level of engagement. We have the ability to be personable and to be connected and like involved in that way.
Mhm.
And I guess my whole thing was like I think a good church with a good spirit, it's going to have conflict because people are in it, but like it's when people really care about the vision and we're all working together to do that. So like I don't know. I guess my beef is with the whole stuff at the beginning about being mad about being in the middle or stuff or being on one side or the other, like a denier or like a lock everything down, wrap yourself in bubble wrap,
Mm.
which is kind of where I've been is like if we can just say we're going to engage in our community and love them in a way that's unoffensive, because we have to be careful to do that right now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh, yeah.
God's love will confront them. We'll trust that He confronts them. Let's just not be confrontational intentionally. That's not our
Mm.
role. Holy Spirit convicts, not us. I guess I don't know how you feel, but anyway, my
Mm.
thing is like, what if we all were like coming together to do stuff and did like community events, like we did a trunk or treat at church and that went fairly well. I thought that like we're the only church that did a trunk or treat because we were able to distance. We had enough space to do it. But like stuff
Mhm.
like that, like what if lay people pitched ideas and like, hey, I'm baking a bunch of cookies because we can't, not everybody can go home for Christmas. So like, could we send out a church email? And if you can't go home for Christmas, you get on this list and then like, I'm going to send you some cookies or I'm going to send you like a dinner plate or something. You know what I mean? Like stuff that you can do that's
Yeah.
safe and that you can cook. I don't know. Like that sounds small, but it means something, the handwritten notes, like, I don't know. Ben, am I making any sense to you? But I'm just thinking about like it's a culture of buy-in, man. Like it's the lay people that are coming to the staff and saying, we want to serve. We want to serve our community. We want to serve our people in our own building. Like, let's do that. You know,
Yeah, it's sort of the whole, what is it? 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. Um,
I think we should
yeah,
flip
when I
it.
was a pastor, yeah, no, I agree. When I was a pastor, that statistic, I mean, I learned about it well before I was a pastor, but that statistic, well, I don't know how accurate it is, but it's a general, rule of thumb
Yeah.
for organizations and stuff. But it was quoted as, I mean, that's just how it is. Like you can't change that. And it's to a degree that's sort of it really depends. So the funny thing about churches is, well, I would say the funny thing about Christianity in the States is when it comes to government, we love small government, like in politics. Like we love when the state and the federal government like just gets its hand out of the church, let us do our own thing.
Yeah.
But when it comes to how the church functions, we love big government. We love our committees. We love it when the pastors make all the decisions. If
Ah,
we have an idea, like we have to go through all these different funnels. Like it is so weird.
big government or bureaucracy? I don't know. What's the difference?
Yeah, yeah, same thing, I guess.
Oh man, that was good, Ben.
So
That was
maybe
good.
this is like an opportunity for pastors, and it's scary. Like as a pastor, it is scary to tell your lay people, you know what? If you have an idea, just run with it, and we'll back you. That can be pretty scary,
I
but
would say at least pitch it to staff, and then we'll back
yeah,
you.
at least pitch the idea, let them know what's going on. But maybe this is an opportunity for churches to, empower their people. That was something that I tried to do. I had some success with it. Like there was actually a lot of ideas my lead people had, and I told them, and I was like, if you have an idea, just let me know. Like, and we'll do it. I don't care if it's a good idea, a bad idea. Let's just try some stuff. Kind of, if you don't have anything going on, I know it's considered bad practice to just throw everything up against the wall and see what sticks, but sometimes you're just in that place. And I
Yeah.
feel like for a lot of churches, that's where they are. Like, just try some stuff. Don't be afraid to fail. Like this podcast was one of those things where Jordan and I were just like, I don't know, let's do something. Um,
Shout out to quarantine. Hey, speaking of positive things come out of this,
yeah.
as we're here.
Oh my. Oh, what?
The podcast. We did this before the quarantine. We started this before or during the quarantine. This was like a product of
Oh yeah.
COVID. I don't know.
True.
That
True. No, no, it definitely was. It sort of started. I think yeah. So
I
I
know
was
you had the
starting
idea
a
sooner,
young
but
adult ministry
yeah,
and couldn't meet in person or anything. I was just like, man, like we got to do something. So I don't know. What if we did like a podcast? This was just one of those things that was thrown up against the wall, and it was one of the things that seemed to stick. There were a lot of ideas in the last year that, from personally, that I've tried, that I've seen other people try, but for myself, that have just failed. And I mean, that's just what it is. Like you try things, some things fail, some things succeed. Churches should not be risk averse places. I get from a financial perspective why some churches are, but you kind of have to get past that. And the funny thing is, like, there are people in the church who are willing to give to things that they believe in. And there are people who have ideas that other people are going to believe in. So, don't be afraid of that. Like this idea of like your idea for a Christmas service or candlelight service.
I just
Like
had another one.
I'm sure there's people in the church who would love to buy into that. So just throwing that out there.
Can I pitch another Christmas idea? I know this is not relevant to what we're doing, but I just had one that came to my brain, and I just got to get it out there.
All
All
right,
right,
sure.
all right. This one's involved, but my church did it when I was a little kid, and it was super 90s. It was super duper 90s, but I think we can bring it back in a good way. Okay, now just hear me out.
All right.
Don't You got to be promised me you're not skeptical. I need your word,
All right.
Ben. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Christmas nativity drive through. Hear me out. So the nativity drive through, we did it this way. I was a kid because I was a shepherd. They made me a shepherd. But they basically dress people up in like these little sections. Now our church growing up had somehow come across, I think someone in the church had some radio stuff. So they will do like a local radio. So you just tune your radio to a local station. I think that equipment's fairly inexpensive though. So as like we let cars in, the cars would drive through, they turn the radio and we had a program. So you went on a rotation and like you would go to the stop and it would tell you the Christmas story or whatever. And so like we had like basically cutouts where we had to do like one or two things as actors and we rotated like with like another person. So it was like all the church basically volunteered and got involved in this. I was like, me and my buddy Luke were like shepherds and we rotated. So every other car, so one of us would go inside and get warm while the other one did the car. And basically like we had one scene where you were like, Mary and Joseph, or Mary meeting the angel. Then it was like Mary tells Joseph, and then like they go to Bethlehem, and then it's like here's the actual nativity, like the actual birth of Christ. Not fake birth, but like baby in a manger. We skipped the bloody part.
Yeah.
And then like you have like another thing where we had our choir go out and sing, and they're all dressed in white as the angels. And they had bright lights above them, and that was really cool. They had a little choral thing. If you're interested in have that, it's okay. You can figure out an alternative, but you drive through it, and like you have the radio thing playing in the background, and then you stop and you get a little bit of live music while you're parked. You just turn your car off for a second, just roll down your windows. So it's a little chilly,
Hmm.
but I mean, like I don't know, it's perfect for COVID. It's perfect for like the situation. And like we had a pretty big driveway or driveway parking lot. So parking lots are pretty well spaced. So you could do that. And then like, I mean, our church had a spot where you could stop in the middle of it and get like hot cocoa, which was kind of a weird place to put a break in a story that's pretty short, but they did. And I remember it because I was a little kid. But I don't know, bring that back. It's super 90s, and I know the nativity's corny, but like Christmas thrives on corniness. This is like on brand. I don't mean that in
True.
a bad way. I
Like,
mean that in like the
well,
best way.
just look at Hallmark, like one of the most popular channels during Christmas. Like, come on,
Yeah, that's it.
corny everywhere.
But you know what I'm saying though? Like the idea is corny, but it represents like it's telling a really important story, and it's
Yeah,
nostalgic because I think people still kind of long for hearing that story. And like, I don't know. I think the people that don't go to church now that grew up going to church, especially on Christmas and Easter, that's like the nostalgia of it brings them back. But if we can tell them something powerful and meaningful, maybe we can keep them there. I don't know.
yeah.
Sorry, see
No,
any
I think that's a
Christians
good
that have a
idea.
tentative,
And
like a difficult relationship.
yeah, well, again, I wrote that one down too. I like that idea. What's funny is when you were mentioning the other one, that was an idea that was going through my head. I was like, what if we did like a live nativity or something,
Oh,
like a
that's cool.
drive-by nativity,
As Holy Spirit
or
working.
drive-through? Yeah, for real. Great minds
If I can get my mom to send me
think
pictures of it,
ideas.
Ben, I'll forward it to you. I guess maybe I can put them on social media around Christmas. I don't
Oh
know.
no, like I know exactly what you're talking about. I went to some of those as a kid,
Yeah.
so
And like
so
again,
I'm
they're
with you.
corny, but they're great. You know, it's perfect for this. We actually rented a donkey, and then but we couldn't afford two of them, and they had donkey in two of the scenes. So they actually someone cut out a donkey of wood, and that was the donkey that was next to me. So it was really weird because you had a live one, and then you had a fake one. It was like the weirdest thing.
Huh.
So
Oh boy,
yeah, dude.
that's good.
Indianapolis, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah, dude.
Um,
Production
so
value should be a little higher than that.
yeah. Uh, so I guess going back, so we've been talking about some ideas. I guess we are sort of answering the question, right? Like, how should church? Well, we've been talking more about how churches should respond to this,
Yeah,
which is maybe explore some creative options. Because so going into this, I had written down some
yeah,
ideas. I just want to throw this out there. So if you're still like wrestling with maybe like in your state, you feel like the laws are sort of imposing themselves on your church and you're wrestling with that, and or you feel like you're being restricted. um I want to just say this because I like breaking things down, looking at them from a wider perspective. So one of the phrases I've heard a lot this year is it's time for the church to be the church. I mean, obviously you hear it in different ways, but that's like the gist of it, right? We're facing something new. God is up to something, and so we need to respond to it. What's interesting is I have seen that phrase interpreted in totally different ways. One of the ways is a little bit to how Jordan and I have responded to it, which is, you know what, we need to be able to adapt. We need to find new ways to minister, right? We need to be apostolic. We need to find new avenues to share the gospel, to be Christ, find out what it means to be incarnational in 2020. Go that direction. The other direction I've seen a lot of people go with it, and Jordan, tell me if you would agree with this sort of assessment of the situation, is people hear that phrase, it's time for the church to be the church, and they hear it as, you know what, we can't shut down, because shutting down the church, going along with lockdowns, is degrading the community of faith. It's breaking our relationships with one another. It's affecting corporate worship, and it's working uh, against the lockdown induced mental health issues that we're seeing. And so we need to be able to respond to that. And maybe just breaking it down that way could be helpful. Um, but that seems to be sort of the two major ways people are interpreting this time, in terms of what does it mean for the church to be the church. And so I don't know. Maybe I'm working backwards with what we're talking about here,
No,
but
no, it's a good
maybe
question.
that sort of resonates with some people. Maybe some of you are hearing like, yeah, that one of what I just said is like, yeah, like that's how my church or that's how I interpret that phrase. So I'll just put it there.
No, I know, but like I guess my challenge to that would be like, well, I understand that we're in really unique circumstances, but why haven't we been the church the whole time? You know, like why does
Hmm.
it take a pandemic to be the thing that makes you fearful of degrading like corporate worship, or why does it take a pandemic to help us be
Hmm.
safety and like clean more? And I know that seems dumb, and you're like, oh, okay, Monday morning quarterback over here. Yeah, I get it. Okay, but we're all Monday morning quarterbacks right now. Okay, I didn't plan on this happening in my 2020. I was supposed to go to Italy this summer. We've been saving up for a couple years, so
Hmm.
a little salty. I'm not even getting to see my parents for Christmas. So anyway, sorry. That's my bitter moment. But my whole thing is this: like I get what you're saying, man. I hear it, and I hear what people are on the side of the aisle. But I just want to challenge you. Like part of being the church is the be part of that, right? Like be it, do it. It's an active thing. It's not passive. You're not just like, all right, I'm here. I'm a member of a club. Like if church shouldn't be a really cruddy country club. You shouldn't have to pay your dues via tithe. Come and sit down and take a couple hours out on Sunday, socialize with your friends, get a small group. You don't even get golf or dinner. You know what I mean? Like, what's the point? Like, that's harsh, but it's true. Like, it shouldn't be that way. It's an active community. It's a body. It's a person. It's a living, breathing thing. Like, we just pitched a bunch of ideas for like trying to like get active in the community, but get active too. But like, I think the biggest problem with the church is that there's too many people that have a lot of opinions, that
Hmm.
Monday morning quarterback like I do, and there's not enough people that are willing to put themselves out there and actually serve. And I
Yeah.
mean that. I don't care if you do just one thing. I do just one thing. I do just one thing and I serve students. But I feel after talking with you, Ben, that I am more motivated to find creative ways to do nice things for Christmas. Because if
Hmm.
I can't go home for Christmas, maybe they can't either. And maybe they're feeling really alone and isolated. So what if I sent them a small little gift? I think
Hmm.
Morgan and I are going to start doing some baking. Pray for these kids
Yeah.
because I can't bake.
Sure.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. That's my thing. I just think that this is an opportunity for growth and it's revealing something to us. And if we're not trying to let God work in it, what are we doing? I don't know, dude. Does that even relate to what you're saying?
Yeah. No, it does. It does.
I'll get off my pulpit now.
No, no, I'm totally with you. Yeah, I do think it is a time for the church to get creative. Though I also do sympathize with people who see like their local communities, their local church experiencing some of that degradation. Like there have been people in my church who as a result of this like going online like they've had that screen fatigue and we've just totally lost touch with them. Like they're
Yeah.
just gone. We don't know where they are. I've had that even in my own young adult ministry. People just fall by the wayside. And for me that's a big thing because young adults, that's my ministry focus. w- Young adults are already dropping out of the church in large numbers,
And now
and
they're tired
this
of
just
being
becomes
online.
like all that much more of an easier reason to just not engage. And I've experienced that, like I said, and that's tough. And so part of that is frustrating, um, because you do see it. But by the same token, something you said reminded me when you said, why hasn't the church been the church this whole time? Like, why do we have to be the church now? Why does it take a pandemic? I love that you said that because it reminds me of a lot of conversations you and I have had, and I've had with other pastors about how much normative Christianity had seeped into the church, and it was just frustrating, feeling like people in the church just don't seem, they just seem like they're there, they don't really care much, they're not really engaged, they're not really taking it serious, and it's sort of weird. Um, to be like, yeah, for a long time I was sort of saying that. Like I was seeing people who just treated it like, oh, it's something that we do when it's convenient. And it's like, but that just sort of hurts the overall mission of the church. Because we're spending time, investing in people who just don't care. And when we could be investing in other places. Well, here we are. And how do I want to say this? This might sound really bad, but a little bit of sifting is not that bad of a thing, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it's sort of a good thing
I don't
to
want
have
people
something
not.
like that.
No, you're not wrong. I don't want people not to go, but I'm also kind of like, you know, I've been challenged by this, and my parents modeled this for me, and I wish I had done it sooner. Actually, no, I'll just tell you a story. I'll just tell you a story because I think it's best to understand. Before I moved out to Colorado, my wife and I went to a church and we wanted to serve in youth ministry. We both served in youth ministry. I started my college degree in youth ministry. I don't know
Mhm.
how much more uh, I can get into that, right? I've done youth revivals, for goodness sake. It's a true story. I did Michigan District's youth revival with Cal
Mhm.
Samuelson. If you know Cal, Cal's a great guy. Uh, we both preached a sermon. Cal's a much better preacher now. Back then, I thought I beat him. It's not a competition, but if it was, I would have won.
Yeah,
So
preachers always compete with each other. It's
they
this
just don't
thing.
know it.
It happens.
Yeah. Uh, but anyway, the whole spiel I'm getting at was that I felt like I was qualified enough to lead, at least to lead a small group or show up and like do some lights for some kids. They told me I had to
Yeah.
be going to church for a year there, and I'm like, the part of the reason I'm asking is because I want to get engaged because I like this church. And you know what happened? As a year came and went, and Morgan and I didn't even realize it, and we were so disengaged and so doing our other thing that we found other things to fill our time, not in church, that we forgot about it. I'm serious. We forgot about it. So when we moved out to Colorado, we found this church. We got connected with the youth group and we asked the same question and they let us join like this. They vetted us really quickly. The guy just like talked to us. He let us go through training. He just asked us some personal questions. It was like, hey, I just want to know what your faith is. I need to hear honest question, like answers out of you. He's like, I don't care. Like, even if you're honest and I disagree on stuff, I may still let you lead. I just want to know where you're at because there's some stuff I'm okay with you saying, stuff I'm not. And he's like, I'll tell you. And that was great. And we were engaged. And that's why I'm so like passive. And now I feel like I can't go to a church where I can't serve. And I feel like it's
Mhm.
wrong for me to participate in a church where I don't serve. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like and I know that sounds dumb, but I'm angry at my people I sit next to on Sunday that show up and don't do that. Like I know I'm a young
Mhm.
couple with no kids and I don't have to drive kids to soccer practice and stuff. But my parents did do that and they still served. And like
Mhm.
that changed my life and they've impacted a bunch of people. I think it's really important. So maybe you're right. Maybe it will like cut off some of the fat in a bad way or in a good way. And I don't want them kicked out of church, but like maybe this should be a wake up call that our churches are dying and all it takes is something totally out of our control to do it. But it
Mhm.
requires a level of engagement from every single one of us. I don't know. Uh,
Yeah.
Sorry. We've been going for a long time on this. I think there's a lot
That's
to
okay.
say though.
Oh, there is for sure. Is there anything that we haven't? Well, I don't know. I don't want to step on you. That's a bad way to put it. I don't
No,
want
I
to
think
overstep
it's
my bounds if you have something to say about this. But I guess to summarize, so like we spent a lot of time talking about, how churches should respond to it. A little bit of time talking about how we as individuals should respond to it. I guess maybe to wrap up my personal view of, all right, how do you as an individual do this? Maybe you're not a leader in your church. Maybe you don't really feel like you have a say or whatever. How do you as an individual respond? Um, I think my church does a great job of this. So when everything started back in March, my church board sent out a survey. I'm not the lead pastor at my church. I know I keep saying my church. I'm just a sort of a staff pastor, sort of. I'm more of a pastor who happens to be on staff. But they sent out a survey to their board,
I don't know
getting
what that
gauging
means, Ben.
everyone's opinions of like, should we lock down or should we shut down? Should we move services online? All that stuff. Thanks for that, Britt. Um, and it was interesting. I got to see the results of that survey, and it was like split. It was very interesting. Like every view was represented. Some people saying, I don't know enough, so do whatever. Some people saying we need to shut down completely, go totally online until the end of the year at least, and then reevaluate. You had some people saying we shouldn't shut down at all. We should just keep doing things business as usual. And I know behind closed doors, I'm sure there was disagreement with how things were done. But when it came down to like how the church functions, we did shut down for a while. We've opened up. People can go to a service in person if they want. We ask that you distance. We ask that you wear a mask. Make sure everything's clean, stuff like that. And I got to be honest. Some people were upset by that, but I'm very proud of my church because everyone there wears a mask, and I know not everyone agrees with it. Not everyone likes it, but everyone does it because we're like, you know what? I don't want to make a big deal about this.
What's more important
It's
than
just a
the
mask
mask?
for Sunday morning worship. Yeah, it makes singing really difficult. Like I can't like I have a hard time talking in a mask. Like I lose my voice real quick. with a
Mm.
mask on, it just messes with me. I don't like it. I hate wearing a mask. I was complaining to my wife. I hate wearing a mask. I got a skin condition now because of my mask, because like wearing it just irritates my skin. But I'm like, you know what? I do not want to make someone else uncomfortable. Even though I know I don't have COVID, but like I don't want to be a reason someone doesn't want to come to church because I just refuse to wear a mask.
Mm.
Like it's just not that big of a deal to me. And I feel that's an appropriate response as an individual to what's going on. Like, is it really like, yeah, you can have your own opinion about it, but when it comes down to how you practice, I think there's nothing wrong with taking into consideration, do it for the sake of someone else, right? Sort of going back to the whole what Paul said about meat. I'm totally taking this out off the top of my head. Um, meat sacrificed to idols. Like if it's not an issue, or if it's an issue for someone else, don't do it. If it's not an issue for you, that's fine, but don't let your personal practice negatively affect the practice of somebody else. So,
Mm.
anyways,
You really are the PB of the PB&J. That was smooth, maybe a little nutty, but mostly smooth. It's
thanks.
good.
Yeah.
It's
I
good.
I don't know. Like, what are your views on that though? Those are just my views of
No,
it.
I
I
think
don't know
that's
if you
fair,
have a
and I
different
think
opinion.
that's the right response, and that's where I've been, man. Like, my wife and I have been to be extra careful. So from the layperson perspective, like, I love my church. I serve my church. I really care, but I've been scared because not everybody's had that attitude. So I got a lot of adults walking around with masks, like here,
Mhm.
and then here, and it's just interesting because that's not
Yeah, like
covering
right below
any
the
hole.
mouth or like below the nose and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like don't you know what I mean? Like, come on, man. Like, the whole idea is to prevent spray and prevent you from receiving any spray that I would put out inherently. And we could talk about mass effectiveness or whatever, and you can give me the stats and data. But the idea is that it lowers the statistics because it's a shield. I don't think that anybody with half a brain would argue that it may not eliminate it. No one's arguing that, but they're arguing that it close it down. But what I was saying was, like, Morgan and I, like, that made us really uncomfortable, and that, like, that was the thing that we had to worry about. And then we have
Mm.
to worry about those people's kids doing the same thing because they're being taught that that's okay. And that sounds bad, but when you got a bunch of teenagers running around, teenagers are the most reckless, dangerous, dirty, disgusting people anyway.
Yeah.
And then you put a pandemic on top of it, man. Come on. And that sounds crazy, and that's, like, really, like, my perspective, and it is because that's all I can offer you. But I like what you said, Ben, because it doesn't matter about the politics of it. It doesn't matter about the uncomfortableness. Like, you're just saying what's more important is the kingdom. And if it's okay to sacrifice this to let somebody be, like, to not let myself get in the way of others, like, I think that's a really good thing. Um, and that's cool because I've been one of those Christians that's been uncomfortable, and I felt really isolated and alone because in my area I wasn't in a place where a pastor said that.
Mm.
Not that I think my pastor is wrong. I just think a lot of pastors are afraid to just have that conflict unnecessarily. Uh, so when you said that, man, that, like, really hit me hard and it was really encouraging. So thank you. That's why I
Yeah.
told you it was smooth, because it was really slick, but it was also really good.
Thank you.
Um, so I hope that you heard that, people, because maybe you're on my side of the fence, and that's going to encourage you to go out. Maybe you're on the other side of the fence. I just want you to hear it from someone who's kind of really wise, like Ben, but someone like me that's not as wise, but that's kind of just fearful all the time. You're putting me at ease in a way that is allowing me to actually worship and really get into the spirit, and I don't have to stop and, like, look in my building. And I spent so much time watching other people.
Mm.
I did. I felt like I couldn't even get into, like, worship or the sermon. I don't remember half the stuff that was preached this summer, and I usually take notes, and I just couldn't focus because I'm just, like, constantly, like, turning my head. So that stuff's important. It seems stupid. I'm not trying to impinge on your rights. I'm not trying to kill your freedom. I'm just trying to feel safe, man. Like, and I
Yeah.
want to serve your kids. So help me do that. I don't know. Can I say that, Ben? Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah. Yeah. That's fine.
Okay.
You can say that. It's all
Because
good.
what you said was really encouraging, and it hit home for me in a way that was like, thank you.
Yeah, man.
Thank you. Because you're not even telling people that it's, like, lawful. You're just saying, do it for your neighbor, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I get it's tough. Sometimes the line is pretty fine, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Try to be
And
gracious.
I'm not even saying, like, you can't do the, like, I don't even care when people do the lift, like the 2 or 3 second lift. where
Mm,
it's like still like covering things, but you're just like, like, because like people claim that they can't breathe in them, which is fine. I'm not saying that you can or can't. Like, I don't know your lung problems or lack of them.
mm,
But, you know, I like what you said. It's cool.
yeah, thanks.
Anyway.
Was there anything else we wanted to touch on with this, or
No, we went in a lot of directions. I'm really glad that we went the way we did, though. I'm glad we talked about it.
yeah,
We should do more of this.
yeah? So I think we will do more of this. So with that being said, if you enjoyed this episode, leave a comment. Be sure to like it. Be sure to share it. And if you have any ideas of things that you would like to hear us talk about, um, or if you would like us to respond to something you had to say about this, leave a comment down below or reach out to us. Again, we'll try to get social media up here pretty soon. But that being said, we will see you next time, and thanks for joining us on the PB&J podcast.